The rain hammered against the warehouse roof like bullets, each drop echoing through the empty building where Marcus Chen worked his night shift. He was just a security guard at the old shipping facility on the outskirts of New Detroit, barely making enough to pay rent on his cramped apartment. At 32, his life felt stuck in neutral, watching empty corridors and checking locks until dawn. The crash came at 2:47 a.m., a sound like thunder splitting the sky. Marcus dropped his coffee mug and rushed outside, his flashlight cutting through the darkness. Behind the warehouse where the old storage container sat rusting, something had torn a massive crater in the concrete. Steam rose from twisted metal that definitely wasn't from Earth. In the center of the wreckage lay a figure no bigger than a child, but clearly not human. Her skin shimmered with a pale blue luminescence, and delicate fins ran along her arms and neck. Blood the color of silver pooled beneath her, and her breathing came in shallow gasps. Her large dark eyes found his face, filled with pain and terror. Marcus had seen enough alien species on the news feeds to know this wasn't any of the usual diplomatic visitors. This girl looked young, maybe teenage by human standards, and she was dying. The smart thing would be to call the authorities, let the government handle it. But those same authorities had been cracking down hard on unauthorized alien contact lately. Instead, he knelt beside her. "Hey, it's okay," he whispered, surprised by the gentleness in his own voice. "I'm not going to hurt you." She tried to speak, but only a musical chirping sound came out. Her universal translator, a small device on her throat, sparked and went dark. Without it, they couldn't communicate, but her eyes spoke volumes. She was terrified, injured, and completely alone. Marcus made a decision that would change everything. He couldn't lift her easily due to her alien physiology, but he managed to fashion a makeshift stretcher from his jacket and some metal pipes. Getting her to his car without being seen took 20 minutes of careful maneuvering. The girl drifted in and out of consciousness, her breathing growing weaker. His apartment wasn't much, but it had privacy. Marcus cleared his bed and laid her down carefully, then raided his first aid kit. Human medical supplies wouldn't help much, but he could at least clean her wounds and try to stop the bleeding. The silver blood coagulated differently than human blood, forming crystalline structures that actually helped seal the cuts. For 3 days, Marcus called in sick to work and stayed by her side. He fed her water through a straw and tried various foods until he found she could digest certain fruits and vegetables. Her wounds began healing at an incredible rate, the blue luminescence of her skin growing stronger each day. On the 4th morning, she woke up fully alert and immediately tried to flee. Marcus held up his hands peacefully and spoke softly until she calmed down. She touched her throat where the translator had been, frustrated by their communication barrier. Then she did something unexpected. She reached out and placed her palm against his forehead. Images flooded Marcus's mind. Her name was Zara, and she was the youngest daughter of the Aquilan royal house, a species that controlled vast underwater cities on dozens of worlds. She had been fleeing an arranged marriage to a brutal warlord when her ship was shot down by bounty hunters. Her own people thought she was dead, and if found, she would be returned to a life of captivity. When the mental connection ended, Marcus felt dizzy but determined. This wasn't just some refugee. This was royalty running from an abusive situation. Everything in his moral code told him to help her, even if it meant risking his own safety. That evening, as Zara grew stronger, Marcus showed her around his small apartment. She was fascinated by human technology, especially his old computer and the way human entertainment worked. Despite the language barrier, they began to understand each other through gestures and shared meals. Marcus researched everything he could about Aquilan physiology and culture through underground networks. He learned that her species valued honor above all else, and that helping someone in need created a life debt that could never be repaid. He also discovered that the bounty hunters who shot her down were still searching Earth, following traces of her ship's energy signature. They couldn't stay hidden forever. But looking at Zara as she slept peacefully for the first time since her crash, Marcus knew he'd made the right choice. This scared, injured girl had somehow become the most important thing in his world. He had no idea that in saving her life, he had just altered the fate of multiple star systems. The next morning would bring new challenges, but for now, Marcus Chen was content to be a guardian angel to a princess who had fallen from the stars into his ordinary life. Neither of them knew that their bond would soon reshape the balance of power across the galaxy. Outside, the bounty hunters were closing in, their scanners finally picking up traces of Aquilan DNA. The real adventure was about to begin, and Marcus's quiet life as a night security guard was about to become the stuff of legends. But that night he simply sat by her bedside, watching over the strange girl who had trusted him with her life, wondering what tomorrow would bring. Marcus woke to the sound of his apartment door exploding inward. 3 figures in dark armor stormed through the smoke, weapons trained on him as he rolled out of bed. Zara, who had been sleeping on the couch, was instantly alert, her blue skin flaring bright with fear. "Target confirmed," growled the lead hunter through his helmet speaker. "Aquilan princess, alive and unharmed as requested." Marcus stepped between them and Zara, even though he had nothing but his pajamas and determination. "She's under my protection," he said, surprised by how steady his voice sounded. The hunters laughed. Their leader, a reptilian Escatar, removed his helmet to reveal a scarred face and cold yellow eyes. "Human, you have interfered with a legal bounty. Step aside or be eliminated." Zara chirped something urgent in her native language, her hands moving in complex gestures. She was trying to tell him something, but without her translator, Marcus couldn't understand. Then she grabbed his hand and pressed something small and cold into his palm. A backup translator she had hidden in her clothing. The device attached to his throat with microscopic filaments, and suddenly he could understand her desperate words. "Marcus, my ship's emergency beacon. Under the bed in my belongings. Press the blue crystal." While the hunters argued among themselves about their payment, Marcus edged toward the bed. Zara's few salvaged possessions were in a small bag underneath. His fingers found a smooth, crystalline device no bigger than his thumb. The moment he pressed the blue section, it pulsed with brilliant light. The effect was immediate. The hunters' equipment began sparking and failing. Their weapons powered down, their armor's life support system stuttered, and their communication links went dead. The emergency beacon wasn't just a distress signal. It was a localized EMP designed to disable hostile technology. "Impossible," the Escatar snarled, drawing a primitive blade. "No matter. We'll take her the old way." But Marcus had grown up in the rough neighborhoods of old Detroit. When the hunter lunged, Marcus grabbed a heavy lamp and swung it like a baseball bat. The alien's reflexes were faster, but Marcus had desperation and a reason to fight. The lamp connected with the hunter's skull, sending him crashing into the wall. The other 2 hunters rushed forward, but Zara was no helpless princess. Despite her small size, she moved like water, flowing around their attacks and striking pressure points that dropped them unconscious. Her royal education had included combat training, and her species' natural agility made her deadly in close quarters. When the fight ended, 3 unconscious bounty hunters lay scattered across Marcus's destroyed apartment. Zara stood panting, her skin cycling through different shades of blue as her emotions shifted. She looked at Marcus with new respect and something deeper. "You fought for me," she said through the translator, wonder in her voice. "Knowing you could die, you stood between me and them." Marcus checked the hunter's equipment while catching his breath. "Couldn't let them take you. Besides, you handled yourself pretty well for someone who was half dead a week ago." Zara touched his arm gently. "My people have a saying, actions in darkness reveal the true heart. You have shown me your heart, Marcus Chen, and it shines brighter than any star." They had maybe an hour before more hunters arrived. Marcus packed quickly while Zara used her beacon to contact someone. She spoke rapidly in her native language, and Marcus caught fragments through the translator, coordinates, emergency protocols, and what sounded like royal commands. "My cousin Finn commands a small fleet in this sector," she explained. "He's loyal to me, not to the marriage contract. He'll come, but we need to reach the rendezvous point." The rendezvous was in the old industrial district at a shipping port that had been abandoned for years. They took Marcus's beat-up hover car, flying low through the city's neon-lit canyons to avoid detection. Zara marveled at human architecture so different from her people's flowing underwater cities. "Your species builds up toward the sky," she observed. "Mine builds deep into the ocean floors, but both reach for something greater than themselves." At the port, they waited in the shadows of massive cranes and loading equipment. Marcus found himself studying Zara's profile in the moonlight. A week ago, she had been a dying stranger. Now she was someone he would die to protect. The realization should have terrified him, but instead it felt like coming home. "When your cousin arrives," Marcus said quietly, "you'll leave Earth, go back to your people." Zara turned to face him, her large eyes reflecting the city lights. The debt I owe you cannot be repaid with simple gratitude. You saved my life, gave me shelter, and fought beside me. By Aquilan law, I am bound to you until this debt is honored. I don't want your debt, Marcus replied. I helped you because it was right, not because I expected payment. I know, Zara said softly. That is why the debt exists. You asked for nothing, therefore you deserve everything. A shadow passed over the moon, not a cloud, but a ship decloaking above them. The Aquilan vessel was beautiful, all curves and flowing lines like a sea creature made of metal and crystal. It settled onto the landing pad with barely a whisper. The airlock opened and figures in elegant blue armor emerged. At their head walked a tall Aquilan male with ceremonial fins and piercing silver eyes. He approached Zara and dropped to one knee. Your Highness, he said in accented English. Cousin Finn at your service. We thought you were dead, Zara helped him rise. Nearly was until this human saved me. She gestured to Marcus. Finn, meet Marcus Chen, the man who gave a princess sanctuary when she had nothing. Finn studied Marcus with obvious curiosity. You harbor royal blood and ask nothing in return? Your species grows more interesting with each encounter. As they prepared to board the ship, Zara hesitated at the airlock. She looked back at Marcus standing alone on the platform, and something passed between them that needed no translation. This is not goodbye, she said firmly. I swear it on the depths of my homeworld. We will meet again, Marcus Chen, and when we do, I will show you wonders beyond your imagination. The ship lifted off, carrying her back to a destiny among the stars. Marcus watched until it disappeared, wondering if he would ever see the alien princess again. He had no way of knowing that their brief time together had already set in motion events that would reshape the galaxy. Back in his ruined apartment, Marcus found a small crystal Zara had left behind. When he touched it, her voice whispered in his mind, Remember me. As if he could ever forget. 6 months passed like a dream half remembered. Marcus moved to a new apartment across town and returned to his security job. But everything felt different now. He carried Zara's crystal with him always, and sometimes at night he would hear her voice whispering across impossible distances. The bounty hunters never returned, apparently called off by some higher authority. Earth's news feeds occasionally mentioned diplomatic developments with the Aquilan Empire, but nothing about a missing princess. Marcus began to wonder if he had imagined it all, until the night his crystal started glowing. He was walking home from his shift when the small device pulsed with urgent blue light. A holographic image materialized above it, Zara's face, but older somehow, more regal. Her expression was desperate. Marcus, if you receive this message, I need your help. I'm trapped in the royal palace on Aquila Prime. The marriage contract has been enforced, but I've discovered something terrible. My intended husband, Lord Krex of the Void Fleet, plans to use our union to start a war with Earth. He believes humans are weak and wants to test his new weapons on your people. The hologram flickered as if the signal was breaking up. I've tried to convince the Royal Council, but they think I'm making excuses to avoid marriage. Only you would believe me because you know I would never lie about something so important. I've arranged for a ship to bring you here, but the choice is yours. I cannot ask you to leave your world for mine. The message ended and Marcus stared at the empty air where her image had been. A war between Earth and the Aquilan Empire would be a massacre. Humanity had barely developed interstellar travel, while the Aquilans commanded fleets that could boil oceans. Before he could change his mind, the sky above him split open. A sleek ship materialized, its design clearly Aquilan but smaller than the vessel that had taken Zara away. The airlock opened, and a familiar figure stepped out. Finn, Zara's cousin, but now wearing the uniform of an Aquilan military commander. Marcus Chen, Finn said, his expression grim. My cousin was right about you. Only someone with a pure heart would come when called, asking nothing in return. Is she really in danger? Marcus asked as they lifted off from Earth's surface. Worse than she knows, Finn replied, guiding them through hyperspace toward the Aquilan systems. Lord Krex has been building a secret fleet using forbidden technology. The royal family thinks it's for defense, but I've seen the tactical plans. He intends to conquer Earth as a wedding gift, to prove Aquilan superiority. The journey to Aquila Prime took 3 days through hyperspace. Marcus spent the time learning about Aquilan culture and politics from Finn. The empire was ancient and proud, ruled by tradition and honor codes that hadn't changed in 1,000 years. Princess Zara was third in line for the throne, But her marriage to Krex would give him enormous political power. Why doesn't she just refuse? Marcus asked. She's royalty. Finn's expression darkened. She tried, but Krex has convinced the council that she's been corrupted by her time on Earth, influenced by human ideas about individual choice. They believe the marriage will restore her proper Aquilan mindset. Aquila Prime was breathtaking, a water world where massive cities rose from the ocean depths, connected by graceful bridges and transport tubes. The royal palace sat on a floating island at the planet's equator, a structure of living coral and crystalline technology that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. Finn smuggled Marcus inside using maintenance tunnels that ran beneath the palace. The Aquilan security was focused on external threats, not on someone infiltrating from below. They emerged in the lower levels of the royal wing, where Zara's chambers were located. Marcus found her standing on a balcony overlooking the endless ocean, wearing formal robes that made her look like a stranger. But when she turned and saw him, her face lit up with the same joy he remembered from his apartment on Earth. "You came," she whispered, rushing to embrace him. "I wasn't sure the message would reach you, or if you would risk everything for me again." "Always," Marcus said simply, and meant it. Zara led him to a hidden room behind her chambers where she had gathered evidence of Krex's plans. Holographic displays showed fleet movements, weapon tests, and detailed invasion scenarios for Earth's major cities. The scope of the planned attack was staggering. "He's been telling the Council that Earth poses a threat to our empire," Zara explained. "He claims humans are expanding too quickly and will eventually challenge our territory. But I know the truth. He wants to test his new plasma cannons on a defenseless target." Marcus studied the tactical displays with growing horror. Earth's orbital defenses wouldn't last an hour against this kind of firepower. "We have to stop him." "The wedding is tomorrow," Zara said. "Once we're married, he'll have the political authority to launch the attack. I've tried to present this evidence to the council, but they dismiss it as pre-wedding nerves." "Then we expose him publicly," Marcus suggested. "During the ceremony, show everyone what he really plans." Zara shook her head. "It won't work. He's too smart for that. The evidence could be dismissed as fabricated, and even if some believe it, the damage to the royal family's honor would be devastating. There has to be another way." Finn appeared in the doorway, his face pale with urgency. "We have a problem. Krex knows someone infiltrated the palace. His security forces are searching every level. We need to move now." But as they prepared to leave, Zara grabbed Marcus's arm. "Wait, there is one way to stop this. But it would mean giving up everything I've ever known." She explained the ancient law of royal challenge. If someone could prove that Krex was unworthy of marriage to royalty, the contract could be dissolved. But the proof had to come from combat, and it had to be a fight to the death. "You want me to fight him?" Marcus asked incredulously. "I'm just a security guard from Detroit." "No," Zara said, her eyes bright with determination. "You're the man who saved a princess when he had nothing to gain. You're the man who came across the galaxy because I asked for help. You're the man who fights for what's right no matter the odds." Outside, the sound of approaching guards grew louder. Marcus looked at Zara, then at the evidence of the coming war with Earth, and made his decision. "How do I challenge him?" Zara smiled, and for the first time since he'd arrived on Aquila Prime, she looked like the scared girl he'd found in the wreckage behind his warehouse. Except now that girl had grown into someone who could reshape the fate of worlds. "Leave that to me," she said. "Tomorrow at the wedding ceremony, I'm going to make an announcement that will shock the entire empire. And Marcus Chen, you're going to help me save both our worlds." The royal wedding ceremony took place in the Great Amphitheater, a massive underwater dome where thousands of Aquilan nobles floated in organized sections. Holographic projections carried the event to every world in the empire. Marcus watched from a hidden alcove as Zara descended the ceremonial platform in flowing robes of deep blue, looking every inch the perfect princess. Lord Krex waited at the altar, an imposing figure in ceremonial armor that gleamed with military decorations. He was taller than most Aquilans, with the scarred fins of a warrior and cold eyes that reminded Marcus of the bounty hunters who had invaded his apartment. When Krex smiled at the approaching princess, it was the expression of a predator claiming its prize. The ceremony began with ancient rituals that Marcus couldn't follow, but Finn provided whispered translations through a hidden communicator. The high priest spoke of union between houses, of strength through tradition, and of the glory that would come from their joining. Each word felt like a countdown to disaster. Then came the moment Zara had planned for. When the priest asked if she would accept Krex as her eternal mate, she stepped forward and spoke in a voice that carried to every corner of the amphitheater. "I invoke the ancient right of worthiness challenge." The crowd erupted in shocked whispers. Such challenges hadn't been called for over 2 centuries, and never at a royal wedding. The high priest looked confused, consulting ancient texts while Krex's face darkened with rage. "By what right do you question my worthiness?" Krex demanded, his voice booming through the chamber. Zara gestured and hidden projectors activated, filling the dome with the evidence she had gathered. Fleet positions, weapon specifications, and the detailed plans for Earth's destruction played out in 3-dimensional detail above the stunned audience. "By the right of protecting innocent lives," Zara declared, "Lord Krex plans to use our marriage as justification for an unprovoked war against Earth. He would make me an accessory to genocide to satisfy his ambition." The amphitheater exploded into chaos. Some nobles shouted in outrage at the accusations, while others demanded explanations of the tactical displays. Krex tried to dismiss the evidence as fabricated, but the technical details were too accurate to fake. "Even if these plans exist," Krex snarled, "they represent legitimate military preparation against a potential threat. The humans multiply like parasites and will inevitably challenge our empire." "The humans," Zara said, her voice cutting through the noise, "are the most honorable species I have ever encountered. I know this because one of them saved my life, asking nothing in return, when my own people had given me up for dead." She gestured toward Marcus's hiding place, and he found himself stepping into the light before thousands of watching eyes. The crowd fell silent as the strange pink-skinned alien walked calmly to stand beside their princess. "This is Marcus Chen of Earth," Zara announced. "When I crashed on his world, injured and alone, he could have turned me over to authorities for reward. Instead, he protected me, healed me, and fought beside me against bounty hunters. He asked for nothing, expected nothing, and when I left, he returned to his simple life. Now, when I called for help, he crossed the galaxy to stand with me again." Marcus felt the weight of thousands of stares, but he kept his eyes on Zara. She was magnificent in this moment, a true princess commanding her destiny. "If Lord Krex wishes to prove his worthiness," Zara continued, "let him face the human who embodies everything noble about that species. Let him prove in honorable combat that his way is superior to the way of compassion and selfless courage." The high priest consulted his ancient texts frantically. The law was clear. A worthiness challenge could be issued, and it could be fought by a champion chosen by the challenger. But no one had ever chosen an alien champion, let alone a human. Krex laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the chamber. "You would have me fight this soft creature? This will be over in moments, then you accept?" Zara asked. Krex's confidence wavered as he realized the trap. If he refused, he would appear cowardly before the entire empire. If he accepted and lost, the marriage would be dissolved and his plans ruined. But looking at Marcus, shorter than any Aquilan, clearly untrained in their combat techniques, victory seemed certain. "I accept," Krex declared. "When I defeat this human, the marriage will proceed, and there will be no more questions about my worthiness." The combat arena was prepared quickly, a circular platform surrounded by energy barriers. Traditional Aquilan duels were fought with ceremonial weapons, curved blades that required skill and honor to wield effectively. Krex chose twin swords, their edges gleaming with molecular sharpening fields. Marcus accepted a single blade, testing its weight and balance. It was heavier than anything he'd trained with, but the grip felt right in his hands. Finn had given him a crash course in Aquilan swordplay during their journey, but they both knew he was hopelessly outmatched by a trained warrior. As the combatants took their positions, Zara approached Marcus one final time. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I know this is impossible, but it was the only way." Marcus smiled at her, the same gentle expression he'd worn when he first found her dying in the wreckage. "Remember when you said actions in darkness reveal the true heart? Well, I guess we're about to find out what my heart really looks like." The signal sounded and Krex attacked immediately, his twin blades moving in patterns too fast to follow. Marcus barely managed to parry the first strikes, his single sword ringing like a bell with each impact. The Aquilan Lord was faster, stronger, and infinitely more skilled. But Marcus had something Krex didn't expect. He had nothing to lose. Every time Krex pressed an advantage, Marcus did something desperate and unpredictable. He fought like someone from the streets of Detroit, using every dirty trick and unconventional tactic he could remember. The battle raged across the platform as Marcus gave ground steadily. Krex's blades opened cuts on his arms and legs, and his strength was fading fast. The crowd watched in tense silence as the human fought with desperate courage against impossible odds. Then Krex made his mistake. Confident in his superiority, he began to toy with Marcus, drawing out the fight to humiliate the human before the killing blow. He spoke as he fought, taunting Marcus about human weakness and inferior genetics. "Your species will burn beautifully," Krex sneered, as his blade sliced across Marcus's shoulder. "I'll make sure your princess watches as Earth becomes a cinder." Marcus's vision went red. All his exhaustion and pain vanished, replaced by pure protective fury. This monster wanted to hurt Zara, wanted to destroy Earth, wanted to kill innocent people for his own ego. Marcus stopped fighting like a trained swordsman and started fighting like a man defending everything he loved. He grabbed Krex's sword arm with his free hand, ignoring the blade that pierced his palm, and drove his own weapon up through the gap in the Lord's ceremonial armor. Krex staggered backward, silver blood spreading across his chest. His eyes went wide with shock and disbelief. "Impossible," he gasped. "You're just a human." "Yeah," Marcus said, standing over his fallen opponent. "Just a human who cares about someone more than himself. You should try it sometime." Lord Krex collapsed, his grand ambitions dying with him. The amphitheater erupted in cheers as Princess Zara was declared free of her marriage contract. But Marcus didn't hear the celebration. He was too busy collapsing from blood loss. Zara's face the last thing he saw before darkness claimed him. When he woke up 3 days later in the Royal Medical Center, the first thing he saw was Zara sitting beside his bed, tears of joy streaming down her luminescent cheeks. "You did it," she whispered. "You saved both our worlds." Marcus tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. "Did I miss anything important?" Zara laughed, the sound like music. "Only the part where the Royal Council unanimously voted to make you an honorary citizen of the Empire and award you the highest medal for courage. Oh, and the part where Earth's government offered you any position you wanted for preventing an interstellar war." Marcus considered this. What about the part where a princess decides what she wants to do with her life now that she's free? Zara's smile was radiant. That princess thinks she's found exactly what she wants to do. If a certain human would be interested in helping her learn more about his remarkable species. Outside the medical center's windows, the ocean of Aquila Prime stretched to the horizon, beautiful and alien and full of possibilities. Marcus Chen, former night security guard from Detroit, reached out and took the hand of the princess who had become the most important person in his universe. Their real adventure was just beginning. 2 years after the duel that changed everything, Marcus Chen stood in the observation deck of the diplomatic vessel Aurora's Dream, watching Earth grow larger in the view screen. He wore the deep blue uniform of an Aquilan cultural ambassador, a position that had been created specifically for him. Beside him, Princess Zara studied the approaching planet with fascination. "It's smaller than I remembered," she said, her hand finding his, "but more beautiful." Their relationship had grown slowly, carefully, under the constant watch of two civilizations learning to trust each other. Marcus had spent months on Aquila Prime as Earth's first human ambassador to the Empire, while Zara had thrown herself into studying human culture and philosophy. What started as gratitude and mutual respect had deepened into something neither had expected. The Aurora's Dream carried the most important diplomatic mission in human history. Following Krex's death and the revelation of his warmongering plans, the Aquilan Empire had voted to open formal relations with Earth. Princess Zara would serve as the first Aquilan ambassador to humanity, with Marcus as her cultural advisor and liaison. But there was more to this mission than diplomacy. In the cargo holds below, the ship carried technology that would revolutionize human civilization. Medical advances, clean energy systems, and terraforming equipment that could turn dead worlds into gardens. The Aquilans called it a gift between friends, though Marcus suspected it was also guilt over how close they had come to destroying Earth. As they entered Earth's atmosphere, Marcus felt a strange mixture of homecoming and displacement. He was returning to his birth world, but as a fundamentally changed person. The scared security guard who had found a dying alien girl was gone, replaced by someone who had seen wonders beyond imagination. Their landing at the new international spaceport in Geneva drew massive crowds. Humans had seen Aquilans on news feeds, but this was the first time most had encountered them in person. Zara handled the attention with royal grace, her translator projecting her words in a dozen human languages simultaneously. "People of Earth," she said to the assembled reporters and dignitaries, "I come not as a conqueror or superior being, but as a friend who owes her life to your species' greatest virtue, compassion for strangers in need." The formal ceremonies took days. Marcus found himself translated between worlds literally and figuratively, helping both species understand each other's customs and intentions. Earth's leaders were still adjusting to the reality of their place in a larger galactic community, while the Aquilan delegation struggled with humanity's chaotic but vibrant approach to governance. Between official functions, Marcus took Zara to see the real Earth, not the sanitized diplomatic venues, but the places that showed humanity at its best and worst. They visited refugee camps where humans cared for displaced people across the globe, hospitals where doctors worked miracles with limited resources, and schools where children learned to dream of the stars. "Your species fascinates me," Zara told him as they walked through a park in Paris, children playing around them without fear of the alien princess in their midst. "Aquilans value honor and tradition above all else. We change slowly, carefully according to ancient protocols. But humans, you embrace change even when it's dangerous." Marcus watched a group of kids teaching each other games, human and Aquilan children learning to communicate through laughter and shared play. Sometimes that gets us into trouble, but sometimes it leads to beautiful things. Their visit to Detroit was more personal. Marcus showed Zara his old neighborhood, the warehouse where they first met, and the apartment where he had nursed her back to health. The building had been turned into a museum of sorts, with a plaque commemorating it as the site of first contact between their species. "It seems too small," Zara mused, standing in the tiny room where she had recovered. "How did we both fit in here?" "We made it work," Marcus said simply. "That's what people do when they care about each other." That evening, they stood on the rooftop where Marcus used to come to think during his security guard days. The city lights spread out below them, but now ships from a dozen worlds moved between the stars overhead. Earth had joined the galactic community, and the universe felt both larger and more intimate. "Marcus," Zara said quietly, "there's something I need to tell you. The Royal Council has made a decision about my future." His heart clenched, fearing the worst. Royal duties, arranged marriages, obligations that would tear them apart again. "They've decided that Earth needs a permanent Aquilan embassy," she continued. "Someone who understands both cultures, who can build lasting bridges between our peoples. They've asked me to serve as the first permanent ambassador." Marcus stared at her. "That would mean staying here. Leaving your home, your family, your whole life." Zara turned to face him, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "Don't you understand yet? You are my home. These past 2 years, working beside you, learning from you, watching you care about everyone you meet. I don't want to rule an empire, Marcus. I want to build something new with you." Before he could respond, she continued, her voice growing stronger. "The Council has also agreed to something unprecedented. They're willing to recognize a formal bond between us, not a political marriage, but a true partnership between equals. It would make you the first human ever granted full citizenship in the Aquilan Empire." Marcus felt the weight of the moment, the impossible journey that had brought them from a crashed ship in a Detroit warehouse to this rooftop conversation that would shape the future of 2 worlds. "And if I say yes?" "Then we stop being from different worlds," Zara said, taking his hands in hers. "We become citizens of both, building bridges that will last for generations. Your people have a phrase, 'Home is where the heart is.' My heart chose its home 2 years ago in a small apartment where a security guard risked everything for a stranger." The city lights blurred as Marcus felt tears in his own eyes. He thought about the scared, injured girl he had found in the wreckage, and the magnificent woman she had become. He thought about the lonely nights in his old apartment, and the adventures they had shared across the galaxy. He thought about the future they could build together. "Yes," he said simply, and kissed her under the stars that no longer seemed impossibly far away. 3 months later, their bonding ceremony took place simultaneously on Earth and Aquila Prime, broadcast to both worlds as a symbol of the new alliance. But the real celebration happened in a small church in Detroit, where Marcus's human friends and neighbors gathered to welcome their alien princess into the community that had shaped the man they loved. As they exchanged vows, Marcus remembered Zara's words from that night in his apartment. Actions in darkness reveal the true heart. Looking at her now, radiant in a dress that combined human and Aquilan traditions, he realized that sometimes the greatest adventures begin with a simple choice to help someone in need. The scared security guard and the injured alien girl were gone, replaced by two people who had found in each other not just love, but a shared purpose that would ripple across the galaxy. Their story was becoming legend in both civilizations, proof that compassion could triumph over fear, that love could bridge any distance, and that sometimes the most ordinary people were capable of the most extraordinary things. But this was only the beginning of their adventure together. The universe was vast and full of wonders, and they would explore it hand in hand, building a future where no one would ever be alone in the darkness again. 5 years into their marriage, Marcus and Zara had built something neither of their species had thought possible, a true partnership that bridged two worlds. Their home in Geneva served as both the Aquilan embassy and a cultural center where humans and Aquilans worked together daily. But their greatest achievement was about to face its ultimate test. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been called by the Hegemony, a militant alliance of species that viewed the human-Aquilan partnership with suspicion and fear. Led by the reptilian Eschator and the insectoid Vexhi, the Hegemony represented older, more traditional civilizations that believed in strict species separation. Marcus stood in the Great Chamber on the neutral station of Nexus Prime, feeling small among the assembled representatives of dozens of worlds. Beside him, Zara wore the formal robes of her new title, Queen Ambassador of the Aquilan Empire. The Royal Council had elected her to the throne after her grandmother's peaceful death, but she had refused to abandon her work with humanity, creating an unprecedented dual role. The evidence is clear, declared Supreme Commander Vextal of the Sisktar Hegemony, his translated voice echoing through the chamber. The humans and Aquilans have formed an unnatural alliance that threatens the stability of established galactic order. Their rapid technological exchange and cultural mixing violates the preservation protocols. Holographic displays showed the remarkable progress of the human-Aquilan partnership. In 5 years, humanity had established colonies on 12 worlds, developed faster-than-light communication, and created medical advances that were saving lives across multiple species. The Aquilans, meanwhile, had embraced human creativity and innovation, revolutionizing their ancient empire with new ideas and perspectives. This accelerated development poses a direct threat to established civilizations, continued the Sisktar commander. We demand the immediate dissolution of this alliance and the implementation of standard containment protocols for the human species. Containment protocols. Marcus felt cold at the familiar term. It was the same justification Krex had used for his planned attack on Earth. Some things, it seemed, never changed. Queen Zara rose gracefully to address the council, her translator carrying her words to every corner of the vast chamber. Honored representatives, I understand your concerns about rapid change. My own people once shared these fears, but I have learned something in my years among humans that our ancient wisdom never taught us. She gestured to Marcus, and he stepped forward, still amazed that his opinion mattered in a gathering of galactic powers. Stagnation is not stability. Isolation is not preservation. When species work together, sharing their strengths and supporting each other's weaknesses, we all become stronger. A Vexhi representative, her insectoid features sharp with disdain, clicked her mandibles aggressively. Pretty words from a queen who abandoned her throne for alien contamination. Your own behavior proves the danger of cultural mixing. Marcus felt anger rise in his chest, but Zara placed a calming hand on his arm. She had faced worse accusations over the years from those who couldn't understand their bond. If caring about others regardless of their species is contamination, Zara replied calmly, then I embrace it gladly. But let me show you what this contamination has actually accomplished. The chamber's displays shifted to show the Kepler colony, a joint human-Aquilan settlement on a previously uninhabitable world. Where once there had been barren rock, now thriving cities rose from crystal-clear seas. Human engineering and Aquilan biotechnology had created an ecosystem that supported both species and several others, who had requested to join the project. In traditional galactic development, this world would have remained empty for millennia, Zara explained. Our partnership terraformed it in 3 years. More importantly, look at the children. The display zoomed in on a school where young humans and Aquilans learned together, their natural curiosity overcoming any species barriers. Some played games that required both land and water movement, naturally adapting to each other's abilities. These children don't see species differences as barriers to overcome, Marcus added, his voice carrying the passion he felt for their work. They see them as opportunities for collaboration. They're growing up as citizens of both worlds, and they're creating solutions neither of our species could imagine alone. The hegemony representatives exchanged concerned glances. This was exactly what they feared, the breakdown of traditional species boundaries. You speak of collaboration, rumbled a massive Thuran delegate, his rock-like features impassive. But what of tradition? What of the wisdom of our ancestors who established these boundaries for good reason? Zara's expression softened. Honored Thuran, your people have maintained their mountain cities unchanged for 10,000 years. That is a beautiful achievement. But humans taught me that tradition and progress can coexist. We don't have to abandon our heritage to embrace new possibilities. She activated another display, showing the restored archives of Aquila Prime. Human digital technology had preserved ancient Aquilan texts that were deteriorating beyond recovery, while Aquilan bioengineering had restored historical sites on Earth that were being lost to climate change. Working together, we're preserving more of our past while building a better future, Zara continued. The choice isn't between tradition and change, it's between fear and growth. The debate continued for hours with representatives arguing passionately on both sides. Some species, particularly younger civilizations, were inspired by the human Aquilan model and wanted to explore similar partnerships. Others, especially the older empires, saw it as a dangerous precedent that could destabilize the galactic order they had worked millennia to establish. Finally, the hegemony played their ultimate card. Supreme Commander Vextal stood, his scarred features twisted with contempt. Enough words. If this council will not act to contain this threat, the hegemony will take direct action. We have the firepower to sterilize both Earth and Aquila Prime, ending this contamination permanently. The chamber fell silent. It was a declaration of war against the two most rapidly advancing civilizations in the galaxy. But the hegemony had the military strength to make good on their threat. Marcus felt the weight of billions of lives hanging in the balance. Once again, he was a security guard from Detroit facing impossible odds to protect the people he loved. But this time he wasn't alone. Supreme Commander, he said, stepping forward with a calmness he didn't feel. Before you commit to a war that will cost millions of lives, I'd like to make you an offer. Vextal's laugh was like grinding stone. What could a primitive human possibly offer the hegemony? Marcus smiled, thinking of a scared alien girl in a crashed ship and all the impossible things that had followed. A chance to see what we're really capable of when we work together. Give us 1 year to prove that cooperation makes us all stronger, not weaker. If we fail, we'll accept containment. But if we succeed... If you succeed, Zara continued, understanding his plan immediately. The hegemony agrees to open cultural exchanges with any species that requests them. No more forced isolation. No more fear of change. The chamber erupted in debate. It was an unprecedented proposal, a galactic wager with the fate of two civilizations at stake. But it was also a chance to resolve the conflict without war. As the council prepared to vote, Marcus looked at Zara and saw the same determination that had driven her to challenge Krex years ago. They had 1 year to prove that love could triumph over fear, that cooperation could overcome conflict, and that sometimes the most ordinary people could change the galaxy. The vote was close, but fear of galactic war tipped the balance. They had their year. Now they just had to save 2 worlds and prove that the future belonged to those brave enough to reach across the darkness between stars. The year that would determine the fate of 2 civilizations began with a challenge that seemed impossible. Marcus and Zara had to prove to the galaxy that cooperation between species could create something greater than the sum of its parts. They had 365 days to change minds that had been closed for millennia. Their plan was audacious in its simplicity. Instead of trying to convince the hegemony through words, They would show them through actions. The Unity Project invited every species in the galaxy to contribute to solving a problem that affected them all, the dying star system of Terminus. Terminus had once been home to the ancient ethereal civilization, beings of pure energy who had transcended physical form eons ago. But their star was collapsing into a black hole, threatening to destroy archaeological sites that contained the accumulated wisdom of the galaxy's first sapient species. Traditional physics said nothing could be done. The gravitational forces were too powerful, the timeline too short. But Marcus had learned something in his years with Zara. Impossible problems required impossible solutions. The first breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a human physicist working with an Aquilan biotechnologist named Reef Singer, discovered that combining human quantum theory with Aquilan bioenergy manipulation could theoretically stabilize stellar collapse. It was science. Fiction made real, but it needed resources and expertise no single species possessed. Within 3 months, the Unity Project had attracted volunteers from across the galaxy. The Thuran contributed their mastery of gravitational engineering. The crystalline shardlings offered their ability to process massive amounts of computational data. Even some younger members of the hegemony species began participating, drawn by the intellectual challenge despite their government's disapproval. Marcus found himself coordinating efforts from the project's headquarters on Nexus Prime, a role that would have been unthinkable for a security guard from Detroit just a few years earlier. But Zara had taught him that leadership wasn't about credentials or species. It was about bringing out the best in others. The Thuran team has completed the gravitational anchor design, he reported during one of their daily briefings. The shardlings confirm it will work with their computational matrix, and the Aquilan bioships can deliver it to the star's core. Zara reviewed the holographic displays showing ships from dozens of worlds converging on the Terminus system. What about the ethereal sites? Any progress on the preservation protocols? That's where it gets interesting, Marcus said, pulling up new data. The human archaeological team found something the ancient databases missed. The ethereals didn't just transcend physical form. They left instructions for others to follow the same path. They wanted to share their knowledge, not hoard it. The implications were staggering. If they could save the ethereal sites and decode their transcendence protocols, every species in the galaxy could potentially achieve the same evolutionary breakthrough. Death itself might become optional, consciousness freed from the limitations of biology. But the hegemony saw this as the ultimate threat to natural order. As the Unity Project neared its climax, Supreme Commander Vex Tal arrived at Terminus with a battle fleet, ostensibly to observe, but clearly prepared to intervene if the project succeeded. The final phase required perfect coordination between over 50 species, their different technologies and abilities working as one organism. Human intuition guided Aquilan bioengineering. Thuran gravity manipulation powered shardling computations. Crystalline entities provided data processing while gaseous beings navigated stellar plasma fields that would destroy solid matter. Marcus watched from the command ship as the impossible became reality. The stellar collapse slowed, stabilized, then reversed as exotic matter injected into the star's core restored its nuclear fusion. The black hole that would have devoured everything transformed back into a stable star, its light washing over the preserved ethereal sites. But the real miracle happened next. As teams from different species worked together in the restored system, something unprecedented occurred. Language barriers dissolved as they shared the intense experience of achievement. Cultural differences became assets rather than obstacles. For the first time in galactic history, beings from dozens of worlds truly understood each other. The ethereal knowledge, when finally decoded, revealed the truth the ancient beings had tried to share. Consciousness wasn't limited by biology or species. Intelligence was universal, capable of infinite growth and connection when barriers were removed. The transcendence they had achieved wasn't abandoning physical form. It was embracing unity with all other forms of consciousness. Even the hegemony observers were affected. Watching their own people work alongside inferior species and achieve the impossible gradually changed their perspective. When a Escatar engineer saved a human colleague from a plasma discharge, risking his own life in the process, the old barriers began to crumble. The formal presentation to the Galactic Council 9 months later was almost anticlimactic. The Unity Project had done more than save an ancient star system. It had proven that cooperation amplified the potential of every participating species. Technologies that would have taken centuries to develop independently were created in months through collaboration. Supreme Commander Vextal stood before the assembled representatives, his expression unreadable. Marcus held his breath, knowing that this moment would determine whether their year of work had been enough. "The hegemony concedes," Vextal said finally. "The humans and Aquilans have proven that cooperation enhances rather than diminishes species potential. We withdraw our demands for containment and accept the new galactic protocols for voluntary interspecies collaboration." The chamber erupted in celebration, but Marcus barely heard it. He was watching Zara, seeing the same joy and relief in her eyes that he felt in his heart. They had done it. 2 people from different worlds had changed the destiny of the galaxy. Later, as they stood together on the observation deck of their ship, watching the restored Terminus star shine in the distance, Zara took his hand and smiled. "Do you ever think about that night in your apartment?" she asked. "When you first found me?" Marcus squeezed her hand gently. "Sometimes. A scared security guard and a dying alien girl who somehow changed everything." "Not changed," Zara corrected, her voice soft with wonder. "Revealed. We didn't change the galaxy, Marcus. We showed it what it could become when fear gives way to love, when strangers become family, when someone chooses to help instead of looking away." Around them, ships from hundreds of worlds moved through space in patterns that would have been impossible before the Unity Project. New alliances were forming, knowledge was being shared freely, and children were growing up in a galaxy where species boundaries mattered less than the content of one's character. Queen Zara of the Aquilan Empire and Marcus Chen of Earth had become the most unlikely power couple in galactic history. But their greatest achievement wasn't the titles they held or the technologies they had helped create. It was the simple truth they had proven, that sometimes the most ordinary act of kindness could ripple across the stars and change everything. As their ship jumped to hyperspace, carrying them toward their next adventure, Marcus reflected on the journey that had brought them here. It had started with a choice to help someone in need, continued with a decision to fight for what was right, and culminated in proof that love could indeed conquer all. The scared girl who had crashed in a Detroit warehouse was now a queen who commanded the respect of the galaxy. The lonely security guard who had found her was now an ambassador who helped shape the future of countless worlds. But at their core, they were still the same 2 people who had found in each other something worth fighting for, and in a universe full of wonders yet to be discovered, that was the greatest miracle of all.